In this academy, only half of you will make it to the second year, and anyone who actually makes it to the end is considered lucky. That's why people say that finishing late doesn't count as a real win. It was a miracle that on the very first day, the professor made it clear that they only had 20 minutes to finish, or that they'd be kicked out right then and there. Everyone rushed in with such panic that no one could even hope to understand those deep, forbidden runes. Then a piece of paper ripped right down the middle showed that Krista Warden, the brightest mind of her time, watched her only way to pass disappear. She feels like she messed up. She thinks the wind snatched it away. But she has no idea that someone in this room just tried to ruin her plans. The boy just glanced at the magic flowing through him and followed the trail all the way back to where it started. The silent, colorless wind magic failed to stop the blonde prodigy, who stepped ahead and smiled as if nothing had happened with just 8 minutes left. Krista is tearing everything down and starting fresh. Their hands tremble as she tries to snatch his paper to copy the answers, but he pulls it away just in time. He warns her that her current plan won't save them in time. She wonders how he could know that without even trying. He insists that the job is still possible to finish. That method just can't handle so much. So, he grabbed the pen himself and started cooking. Before they could get up, the blonde kid moved faster, surprising Hubert, the talented genius from Rohoam Academy who used invisible wind magic to rip their paper without anyone noticing. He smacks his papers onto the professor's desk like he already knows he's right. The professor casts the spell, checks the runes and the timing, and shakes his head, saying it's passable but far from perfect. Such a tricky problem ought to be solved in just 2 minutes. The kid can't get over getting a C. He claims he came in first. He claims to have found the perfect formula, which is the moment the professor reveals the secret of wind magic. He had always known all along. Hubert's face turns pale just as Rain steps forward to hand him the paper. The professor chuckled and sighed, wishing they hadn't finished so he could finally banish his 2 students. Rain calmly replies, if a tiny breeze stops someone from using magic, they don't deserve the title of mage. And the professor quickly grabs the paper away. The magic circle they've drawn is all wrong. It isn't that things are broken, but rather that people are too indifferent to fix them. Rain used a fan shape for one circle and a standard for the other, and nobody else does that. The professor asked why, and Rain explained that the spell works best with water because it uses a simple math trick to make the acceleration happen faster, leaving the professor amazed that a normal student knew such a complex secret. But the professor points out that knowing the theory is just one part of the story. Making it happen is the real challenge. So he challenges Rain to prove his claim. He begins casting a spell, eagerly waiting to see that ego crumble, as papers glow and flash like a mana star before rain pours down. The whole class stands still, holding their breath. After 13 years of teaching, the professor begins to clap slowly. There were plenty of geniuses there, but they never once gave an answer like that. Grade S Bro didn't react. He just walked past Hubert and muttered, next time I won't let it slide. So how'd a kid with no credentials just humiliate the top prodigies of the 8 great schools on day 1? Let's rewind just 300 years back to the tallest magic tower in the Empire. There was a boy who didn't care about the world, Lin, the youngest mage in history, who climbed from the slums to 4 stars after being cast into a tower full of books from which he never left. He just wanted to reach the 7 stars, the special level where people say you can finally see the true world. Brother stayed in that locked-in zone until a silver-haired girl named Esther barged into his library, ignored his threats, and got buried under a pile of books, making him smile for the first time in years. Knowing she wouldn't live long, she didn't hide from her fate, but instead gathered friends to save the world before her time ran out. Lynn wondered if there was any fun in it all. She stared him right in the eyes and spoke only the one word, world, while he stood there unable to join her to save anyone. He followed her lead, driven by the spark of curiosity she ignited in him. It was an absolutely wild and impossible to top party. Every single person was the absolute best at their job. Even though Lynn was the youngest, everyone could see a talent unlike anything they had ever seen before. Look at all those smiles, my friend, because we know a sad ending is waiting right around the corner for them. As they fought their last battle, Bro snagged a deadly abyss poison that could never be cured. Bro, this one just won't quit. He cut a mark that meant living forever right into the center of his own heart. His body locked up tight after he promised Esther he would return. She held his hand and promised to wait while Bro froze into a popsicle, knowing the spell would only break once his body was fully healed. After 300 years of searching for the truth, a boy named Rain wakes up in a stranger's body and walks into a public square where he sees statues of his old dinner buddies, each marked with the date he died. So no, Rain isn't just some nobody who got lucky on a test. He's the secret inventor of the spell everyone calls the Saint Mage, yet he can't tell anyone. Once class was over, Krista shouted out to Rain. When he asked what she wanted, she felt a bit shy and thanked him again for earlier. He looked serious and asked her to repeat what she said since he didn't hear it. Her face turns red as she tells him not to make things worse, promises to pay him back, and warns him not to get big-headed since they are rivals above all else. While she points at Rain, passersby whisper about Professor Owen giving top marks to Hubert, and then Krista, who just got paired with a famous genius. The next day at the academy, Rain reminded Krista of her promise to pay him back when she saw him again and asked where her dorm was. She told him his room was likely on the top floor because of his high exam score and warned him not to show off. He shot back that whether she was showing off or not, she was the one who said making promises you can't keep makes you look shallow. At the start, she snapped at him to just hang on a bit longer. As Rain stepped into the dorm, a guy muttered about him being the top-ranked student and the eldest son of the Worth family. Rain stood before the door, wondering if this really was his room. Holding the amulet, he opened it to discover he had stumbled into a private room. As he walked to the desk, he said the room felt just like the magic tower he used to visit. Even before this life, he had spent his days trapped in a room like this, doing nothing but studying magic. For just a second, his mind wandered to Esther. Lying on the bed, he figured that after the first lesson, there was really nothing else left to do. He wondered if he should sneak into the Vatican to find his remains, but getting in with his current disguise would be a real challenge. He drew a few magic circles to cast a spell, but to his shock, nothing happened. It seemed he wasn't quite ready to face 4-star magic yet. Suddenly, an owl landed on his window and gave him a jump scare, leaving a wooden box behind. Ray looked around and saw there was no center, so he wondered if his dad had sent it. He stepped inside and found 2 books, but he froze when he realized one of them was the diary he had given to Esther. After a moment's thought, shock surged through every part of Rain's body. The person who sent this message knew exactly who he truly was. At the magical training field, Krista pushed herself hard, battling fierce monsters as every second ticked by. Her friend, who was counting down the seconds, told her only 15 were left and asked if anything good had happened, but Krista said nothing had changed and asked why. Her friend noticed that Krista seemed much happier than usual. With only 5 seconds remaining, the girl wondered if Krista was just mad about seeing him every day and took her anger out on their training. Her friend, thinking it over, told Krista that nobody was buying her act. She was sure the talk about Krista getting help from Rain during the exam was really true. That surprised her, because the Rain from her childhood wasn't like this at all. In the main hall of the dorms, that blonde guy from earlier walked down the corridor. Just then, a man who saw him walking over called out and mocked him as a C-grade loser. Everyone just looked the other way because they already knew what kind of guy he was. Hubert turned to him and warned that he'd better stop messing around, or he might not wake up tomorrow. Logan told him to relax and mocked him for getting a C, so much so that he almost peed himself laughing. He mentioned that a girl named Krista earned an S rank, even while sandbags held her back, but Hubert just ignored him and quietly walked away. Just as he was heading out, Logan brought up Rain and asked if she lived up to the cowardly rumors, admitting that even if she did, she was still far better than Hubert. Without looking back, the blonde man muttered that a guy built like a brick wall wouldn't talk like that, then got angry and asked if Logan was daring him to a fight. Logan sneered and said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing." They were glaring at each other until a red-haired woman named Lillian stopped them by asking if they were done reading, since she didn't even look up from her book and reminded them that others were there, and she was just a postgrad at the academy. Logan laughed it off, telling her not to be worried since it was all just a joke. He told us he was making a plan to take down Krista and Rain and asked if Lillian wanted to join him. Lillian looked bored and told him his magic was stuck because bullying weak people gives you nothing to gain. Hubert steps in and says he will look after Krista and Rain on his own. He spins around and warns that if the other guy tries to crash into him without thinking, he'll be the first to get knocked out. Once the door is closed, the guy yells at Logan that he is an idiot. He punched the wall hard, trying to figure out what Rain had really done. Rain had spent 3 years under Professor Scholesey's watch, earning his spot even though he had never achieved a single ranking, which shouldn't have been possible. At the same time, Rain sat in his room and read the book that had been sent to him. The first part told the story of Lynn's life, while the second part showed off the magic and fighting moves he had learned. The Rain couldn't figure out. Even if people knew his secret, they hadn't called. So, at 11 p.m., he decided to turn off the lights just as the housemaster was about to arrive. Rain glanced at the book, his mind drifting back to the kid who had been following him. Suddenly, a Rudian leaps out from inside the book. The Rain shocked everyone because it was Rudy's magic from the old AE school. He pauses, wondering if it's the one he built in a past life, but then he sees it's at least twice as big as he remembered. Yet, the fact that this magic had lasted 300 years was truly impressive, leaving him to wonder who cast it and why. For a brief second, Rain thinks of his old friends while the Ridian lands on his hand to tell him his special magic research is only 37% done. Suddenly, a massive window swings open right before his eyes. Rain froze in shock, realizing this was his old research, the very work meant to push him to the sage level. There are 12 original rooms where he tested his skills in battle 300 years ago. He thought everyone had failed, but it turns out they've only reached 37%. But then he realizes a 4-star spell shouldn't work and wonders how Ridium even tracked a 6-star one. So he grins, lets it go, and thinks that if this is real, he was right to keep going and might finally find the truth. That sudden spark of hope makes Rain forget entirely who sent the book. He slipped on his robe and knew it was time to start his research. But as soon as he steps out of the dorms, a heavy rain starts pouring down on him. While rain brings cold to the north, the mountains kept the south warm, even when it poured. Rain hums a tune to himself as he walks through the steady rain. As he reaches a certain spot, he wonders if there truly is a place where he can practice magic without any limits. The woman with greenish hair declares that a battlefield is the perfect place for this and offers to lead him there. The dorm supervisor says this battlefield is a massive training ground where you can blast away with powerful magic, safely protected by a shield that heals you no matter how recklessly you cast your spells. She tells him that all he needs to get in is simply touch it with a student ring. When he steps through, the wall of fire parts as if by magic, and a voice from the system greets him, telling him there are 30 empty rooms waiting for him. As they say their goodbyes, the supervisor invites him to use them, and Rain replies that he'll take room 15. The request is approved, and before you can even blink, he finds himself alone in an empty room. Rain demands a tough opponent, and so a monster bursts up from the floor to face her. Rain notices it's a 2-star monster and says, "That's not so bad." As he opens the book and begins with the U-rune, the room he builds into a triangle shape strangely crumbles, so he quickly closes his hand since that single-star magic isn't working. When he opens it, Rain weaves a spell using 3 glowing triangular runes. With the rhythm of a mad alchemist, he slams his fist into his palm to spark a tiny explosion. But since the monster takes no damage, his frustration grows while Hubert watches from afar and mutters that such a pathetic display of magic is truly trash. He thinks it's a 1-star spell, but the kid can't seem to cast it properly. The main thing about flame magic is that it's usually loud, yet this was so quiet it looked like a beginner's trick. Hubert turns away, convinced the rumor that Skolsey was merely Rain's assistant must have been a lie. Our hero kept blasting magic until the monster cracked, fell apart, and hit the ground. The boy let out a long sigh and admitted that it was all a failure. The fire, with its unique ability to melt from the inside, finally seeped into the 2-star golem's body after 30 seconds of struggle, just as he had planned. He wasn't sure if the symbol needed to look sharper or if the math itself was the issue. Rain smirked, convinced he still had plenty of time to figure out. No matter how many times he'd made mistakes, Rain was convinced he could fix it. As he kept digging into his research, our hero ended up giving the symbol a little twist. Ridian didn't just spot the magic nearby, but also shared everything they learned that day, making him a truly amazing helper. Then our boy spotted something. The research percentage crept up by 0.1%, and he couldn't tell if it was his new theory working or if the rune itself had finally been perfected. He wondered if there was a deeper purpose to that training, but chose to stop overthinking it since he still had plenty of time. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind rushed toward him, sparking his curiosity. Rain saw it was Hubert and guessed he was just a fresh face from Manhwa Academy. Swarm after swarm of bats buzzed around the blonde guy. One of them charged forward, but the monster exploded into pieces from a single punch. Moving fast, the guy kept attacking until all the other monsters ended up just like him. That impressed Rain, who decided Hubert wasn't so bad after all and was worth keeping in mind. But then our hero noticed something strange about the way the man was moving. The scene shifts to the academy, where the professor breaks down the spell-casting process into 3 steps, drawing the circle, carving the runes, and doing the math. Of those, many mages stumble at the 3rd step because a single slip in their math could spell disaster. To stop them from turning to ash or exploding, the Archmage Lin invented a math rule called Lin's Discriminate, telling the students to solve his example within 10 minutes, since the formula was so easy that even the least bright person should be able to crack it. Rain stared at the paper he'd been handed and wondered who had shared that formula with him, since none of his classmates knew it, and they couldn't even add or subtract. Yet, one face remained in his mind. Tina, the kid who hung around him, pretending to be his student. Our hero guessed that the kid might have taken an idea from Lin, invented centuries ago, but he quickly shook that thought away. Just then, Chris struck him, and Rain asked if she was struggling and told her to show him, saying it was silly for him to doubt her, Krista Warden, the great genius. Suddenly, The professor gave her a scary stare, and she quickly apologized, promising she would never speak out of turn again. Rain asked what she wanted, and with a shaky voice, she handed him the box. When Rain noticed the fancy box, Krista explained it held cookies she baked during her spare magic training time. Rain was about to ask why, but she cut him off and reminded him that he was the one who said she owed him, while he opened a box to find cookies that looked more like charcoal, leaving Krista rambling and completely thrown off. Rain asked if she really meant those cookies. Krista agreed, so Rain asked if they could use mud instead of flour, which made her angry, causing the professor to throw something at her to make her stop, while a student praised Lin as a genius for inventing that formula. And hearing all the praise made Lin feel like he was standing in a field of flowers, as others called the Mage a reincarnation of an angel or saint, leaving Rain embarrassed and begging them to stop at his head, while Krista wondered why his face had suddenly turned red. She wondered if he had become shy over just a few cookies, realizing that even though he always acted like he knew everything, there was a softer side to him deep down. The teacher who stopped by mentioned that even though the primate missed class, she did a great job defending herself and asked if he'd be up for a special lesson. The bell rings, saving the class, and the teacher calls for everyone to hand in their work. As they study the list of clubs, Krista turns to Rain and asks which one she plans to join. Krista says she's going to join the Magic Volleyball Club because descendants of the Magic bloodline must keep their dignity by playing it. And when our protagonist asks if she's really serious, she admits she didn't even know that until recently. Raymond interrupts Krista's answer about dignity to demand the location of her favorite item, dismissing her concerns as he leaves to explore other clubs that delight in offers for student competition. Among them were the Combat Magic Club, the Fire Magic Club, and a club for festive spells. Student clubs gather folks who share the same dreams and get money for their fun projects as long as the teacher says yes, making it a perfect place for everyone to dive deep into their own research. Rain had so many cool spots he wanted to see, but Krista following right behind him made it impossible for him to focus. She screams at him to join the Magic Volleyball Club, reminding him that Rain's dad said people with magic blood should sign up. Rain says that's fine because his dad won't stop him from doing what he wants. Krista's friend insists it can't be true since the volleyball club is legitimate and he should join to honor the magic bloodline, but Rain says it's not required and has his eye on the Magic Sculpture Club. Plus there's also the local Magic Development Club. Ray remembers that people used to fight just to survive, but then the world became peaceful and everyone could finally do what they truly loved. Esther always told him that once he grew up, the world would surely become a better and richer place. She prayed that Lynn would be strong enough to keep us all safe. Gertrude snaps, seeing Rain out of his daydream by calling to him and asking if he's really listening. Suddenly, Rain just starts walking without saying a word. When someone asks him where he's heading, he says he's just stopping in at the local Magic Development Club. Gertrude is left wondering if Rain doesn't realize that Magic Volleyball is actually a huge part of fancy mage parties. She sighed and said that the long rivalry between the Wick and Page families, which had lasted over 100 years, seems to be ending now that Lord Rain has arrived. Then she realizes the truth. The Page family's eldest daughter vanished after a specific event, and now the Wood family has fallen as well. With a fierce, almost glowing hatred in her voice, she claims that such a moment would be the perfect start for a new age ruled by Krista. But when Gertrude turns around to find the girl, she's gone. She can hardly believe her eyes and wonders if Krista might be following Rain. Just as Gertrude guessed, Krista is secretly following Rain, pretending she just wants to check out the local magic club. As I finally reach the door, just as Rain is about to open it, he freezes at the sound of a loud argument spilling out from inside. One man refuses to accept the deal, while the other tries to convince him that the club's strict, take-everything rule leaves him no choice. Logan, the arrogant guy with his usual laid-back look, tells the other kid to hand over the room. Ray notices the stranger and asks who he is, only for Krista to explain that it's Logan, a junior from Chihak Academy. Rain repeats the school's name like a question, and with a sigh, she answers that it is a place for martial arts. Logan sneers at the kid, daring him to fight him and questioning whether he has the courage to settle things with a duel. Logan shrugs off the kids' club, claiming it won't be a mistake since who really cares about a small local group anyway. Krista watches like a curious neighbor and says clubs often have to steal rooms from one another just to find space for their activities. Rain confirms the magic duel settled everything. Then the girl teases him about joining the club while he claims he just doesn't like annoying stuff. He told his friend that magic isn't just about solving hard math problems or winning big academic prizes. Logan questions why academic success drove magic forward while farming and disaster relief lagged behind, leading the other man to suggest that unlocking magic in those fields could end poverty, only for Logan to insist that magic alone isn't enough to fix such deep problems. Pointing at him, The nerd explains that the club was started by older students to make this happen, and since he can't ignore the people suffering right now, he won't hand it over to Logan. Hearing this, Logan bursts out laughing and asks if the kid is serious, noting that if it were truly possible, the archmagers would have done it already. Logan grabs the kid by his shirt and asks what this guy, who can't even hold onto a club against a freshman, thinks he's going to do. He chuckles with confidence and asks if those self-proclaimed elite group have finally found any results after all this time. The kid is left speechless, with no idea what to say next. Logan presses on, challenging the guy to face him directly, pointing out that if he won't, it means he doesn't think it matters, which is annoying, so he asks why the kid isn't helping the person right in front of him instead of worrying about some prophecy. While the kid clings to his shirt and begs to stop, Logan mocks his trembling fear until Rain snaps him out of it with a jolt of electricity, forcing him to drop the boy just as Logan was about to slam him down. The protagonist gathered his power and asked Logan if he'd rather fight a magic battle than keep bothering that kid. Logan stared at Rain, trying to figure out who this stranger was. Rain quickly explains that he's brand new to the club. After hours of steady work, the progress finally climbed from 37.1% to 37.9%. Rain wonders in a rhetorical tone if magic can truly do everything, because while it's amazing, there are still things it simply can't do. I think this could turn the middle of the desert into a cool, watery haven for travelers. Then he remembers Esther, who once asked him to make simple spells that anyone could use to help those in trouble and make life a little easier. Logan glares at the person who suddenly appeared out of nowhere, filled with hate. He suddenly shifts his face and replies, "Oh, so you're new," before spotting something strange. Krista stands behind the Rain, and the boy's red eyes look strangely familiar. Logan moved forward to admit the kid was foolish, then quickly stopped himself to say he's always thinking out loud. He looked at the kid, saying he was just heading over to say hi, but he asked if the kid really mentioned a magic duel. He scoffs, asking in a proud voice if he really heard that. The protagonist calmly agrees, which is exactly what Logan wanted to hear, so Logan offers him a chance to try a match. Laughing, Logan asks if Rain really thinks she can beat him. Throwing it back at him, Rain asks if he's scared. If so, Rain can give him an advantage by not using any magic during the fight, and if that's still not enough, Rain says he'll only use 3 spells developed by that club. That confuses Logan, who asks if he's serious. Confidently, Rain says Logan's basically saying he won't lose either way. Logan admits the mistake wasn't just a failure but pure stupidity, covers his mouth in embarrassment, and asks Rain if she knows a new member takes 3 days to get approved, meaning his actions were just a personal challenge at that point. Rain catches Logan plotting and demands he just say what's on his mind. Logan turns to the club leader and promises that if Rain wins, he'll give up the room and handle any troublemakers himself. But if Logan wins, the kid will have to sign the papers to quit school. Logan laughed and admitted that since meeting him, he felt like there was a huge wall between them that couldn't be crossed. But Christo, who had been listening outside, burst in and asked if he was joking since the deal wasn't fair at all. Logan, already fed up with her, tells the busybodies to shut up. Rain nods and warns Christ to stay out of it, asking him if he truly knows what's really happening. Rain stares Logan down and says he doesn't need to worry because he's going to win. Rain gives Logan the free rein to pick the time and date. So with a laugh, Logan insists on bringing a teacher to judge and sets the duel for that very day at 6 in the Dragonblood Arena, as he walks past the stunned Krista to tell the boy he'll be waiting for him. As Logan walked through the school, he grinned, knowing he'd finally caught something huge and that the principal and elders would be thrilled. He knew that day was going to be amazing. Krista yells at Rain, asking if he's lost his mind by challenging her to a magic fight there. As Rain flips open the book, he brushes it off by saying he's just a freshman in college. She tells him to stop playing around, but Rain ignores her and just grabs more books. Seeing that, she turns away and tells him to do whatever he wants, admitting she's an idiot for ever worrying about him. As she walks away, Rain wonders why Krista is so angry. Standing up, the club leader shouts that it makes no sense for Rain to be the one who fought, since people with magical blood never enter duels. But then Rain spots something strange. It was strange that a second-year club leader was commanding a dragon with wings spread wide like a king. Putting that behind him, Rain asks him why he said that. The leader admits he's more confused than grateful because there's so much to lose, and he asks why Rain helped him. Ree says he didn't mean to help, but he did because of a promise, and while the confused guy says he's grateful, he thinks Rain is underestimating Logan. Hearing that, Rain can't help but wonder if Logan is truly as amazing as they say. The guide says Logan is basically a mage king who rules from far away and crushes ordinary mages with ease. On top of that, he's fought in many duels and won over 90% of them. Sitting down, the nerd says Rain landed himself in a dangerous mess just by talking without thinking. He admits he probably went too far arguing with Logan over something that wasn't even a big deal. He wipes his glasses and shares how he grew up in the countryside, where the villagers gave their life savings to cover his school fees. So, he decided to give something back to help make the village a better place for everyone to live. That's how he decided to join the club and begin his search for magic. But things didn't go as he hoped, and his worry just grew worse until he held on too tight and walked away with nothing at all. He wonders if that sounds pathetic and admits it feels like God is telling him to give up. The leader laughs nervously, stands up, and declares he'll be the only one willing to take part in this duel. The rain stops him cold, and he stares back with a serious look to ask what exactly seems so pathetic about any of it. Rain pulls a book from the shelf, declares that he accepted the magic duel, and asks if he can borrow a few magic books. As he walks out of the club room, promising to return soon, the guy tries to stop him, and that's when Rain asks if he knows why Archmage Lin began studying magic. Confused, the leader asks why, but Rain explains it was only to stay alive. Benny says that everyone picks up magic for their own special reason. As Rain walked down the university hall, everyone stopped and whispered about her. Knowing the gossip had already taken off, he realizes it's growing into something way bigger than he ever imagined. Then he heard a voice calling out, saying they had finally found him. As he spins around, Rain sees Ellen standing there, drenched in sweat and out of breath, asking if he's all right. The boy greets her with no anger or hate in his heart. Before he can speak, she suddenly dives forward and traps him in a tight hug. She admits she can hardly sleep over him and asks if she heard wrong about the duel. Then Rain confesses that the rumor was actually true. That makes her laugh until she cries, so she shouts that her cute nephew has caused a huge mess and she needs a drink, while Rain yells that his head will burst if she keeps squeezing it. She releases him, telling him that getting hit by Logan would hurt far more and calling his reaction dramatic. She sighed softly, and Rain, who is always slow to move, asked if she was worried about him. She spins around and shouts that she's not some pathetic aunt who worries about him, then flicks his forehead a few times and says he won't learn until Logan gives him a real beating. Aelin starts to walk away, while Rain rushes to apologize, admitting he didn't know it was something he shouldn't have done. Even so, he pledges that he will never bring shame to his family. His aunt says his actions have brought shame to the family and could even get him kicked out, but she's really just furious at the people who made fun of him. Turning back with a proud smile, she tells him that since Rain started it all, he better step up and crush that guy when the time is right, because the Wood family name rests on his shoulders, and he can't let anyone think they can catch up. In the arena, the two of them lock eyes and stare each other down. Rain recalls his aunt's advice, realizing he meant to do this all along, and as the fight begins, the whole school rushes to watch. After all, a useless noble and a chain-wielding brute were facing off. The male teacher watches the fight, while the female teacher asks who he's rooting for, Logan from her side or Rain, his own student. The teacher tells us that who your parents are, where you were born, or how much school you've had doesn't matter to him at all. She laughs genuinely at his promise to back whoever wins, saying she never expected anything less from him. The referee steps forward to introduce himself as Theon. Since the duel is officially allowed by the school, the loser must accept whatever terms the winner sets according to Academy rules. After speaking those words, he gestures for both of them to step forward. With all the confidence in the world, Logan shrugs off his cape and struts right up to them. The Rain looks down on him with pure hatred. Some say Logan is way too ready for what a washed-up noble like him really needs. While Krista watches the fight, she jumps back when Gertrude appears and remarks that Krista must be nervous, but Krista insists she only wants to see Rain get beaten up, and Gertrude smiles as she agrees. Over in another part of the stands, the teacher worries that since apprentices are slow at casting spells, the faster, close-up fighters in the major class are a huge danger. She can't help but wonder how the boy will handle that. In that split second, both the teacher and every student staring on her left speechless as Ray yanks a broom right out from under his cloak. Logan thought it was just a wooden stick, but it turns out to be a broom. Everyone bursts out laughing, mocking him as if he wandered here just to sweep the floor. When Krista sees it, she hides her face in disappointment. The referee stops him and asks what that is, but Rain quickly says he just borrowed it from the library, and luckily, the cleaning crew had just finished their job. Smug, Logan asks the kid if he's begging for mercy. Just a few hours ago, he was acting tough, but now he's showing up with a broom. The muscle-headed mage thinks Rain has finally stopped, so he won't make things even worse by showing off. Rain scoffs at Logan, asking just when a major learned to win with words. Furious, Logan lunges forward until the referee steps in and yells that he's gotten too close. The judge promises to lock down all the rules before the fight begins. If Logan loses, he'll be stuck working as a guard for the local development club until he graduates. If Rain loses, he must pack his things and walk away from Deland. The judge asks if anyone objects to the ruling, and both of them quickly nod in agreement. As Thean casts the spell, he tells everyone to step back since the duel will begin in 10 seconds. The spell begins ticking down the seconds. The crowd surges forward to catch the fight before it starts. Ellen's assistant offers to finish the work alone since Ellen won't stay to watch, but Ellen refuses, and the girl notes that Ellen seems strangely calm about it. Ellen, frustrated, asks if the assistant is saying she can't keep her cool, and the nervous helper quickly insists she didn't mean that. Ellen gazes out the window, smiling as she wonders if rain might actually be a wise vessel. She says there's no point in watching anymore because the result is already locked in. As the timer hits 0, the judge shouts go, and the race is finally on. Logan, acting like a complete jerk, yanked the bandages off and told Rain she had better get a good look because once he left the school, she'd never get another chance to see him. By waking the Chehak school's hidden power, his body grows stronger and is marked with glowing lines, revealing a secret room on the left side of his chest. Hubert watched in awe as he activated it, knowing that even one tiny slip could shatter bones or tear organs. The teacher sees no surprise in the fact that the boy has become one of the school's top talents. Holding his broom, Rain keeps his cool while Logan, veins popping on his forehead, shouts that he'll end this in 10 seconds. Our hero is small, but the other guy rushes right at him. Rain stands still while everyone else stares in shock. Just before striking Rain, Logan explains that even if the kid could move, it wouldn't matter because the spell built a magic shield on his skin that blasts outward to do damage the moment it hits. There's no holding back, so all that's left is to crush the kid. Just as Logan is about to strike, a spinning range broom knocks his arm back. Logan freezes in panic, but there's no time to think because before he can recover, the kid slams another spinning strike into him. The hit blasts Logan through the air and leaves everyone shocked. The professor wonders if that was the Orier school staff's trick. 300 years ago, the great Mage Lin's spell lifted Osiris to become one of the 8 top schools. Even the magic users had to be ready to fight right in front of them. And people whispered that the mage learned that trick with Esther's help. The professor can't wait to learn how the Ludwig family heir acquired that skill. But right then, the blonde teacher spots something that leaves her shocked. The kid's broom didn't break, but when he swung at the reinforced target, the handle snapped and flew off. She wonders if it was magic, especially since who is this kid to have a raindrop-sized splash launch Logan and send the crowd wild with talk? Logan struggles to lift himself up, only to suddenly cough up a mouthful of blood. He can't believe it as his strength crumbles under the sweeping attack of a useless noble. Our hero looks down at him and asks if he didn't say he'd end it in 10 seconds. Rain says he'll knock out the promising junior in just 6 seconds since he wouldn't want to beat up someone who has so much potential. The kid drops into a fighting stance, tells Logan to bring his full strength, and says he's ready to go. Furious, Logan leaps to his feet, stomps hard enough to crack the arena floor, and knocks Rain off balance. Then he tosses a few rocks into the air, but Rain sweeps them all aside with her broom. But when he looks up again, our hero has lost sight of Logan. Rain turns to look behind him, casts a spell on his broom, and blocks the attack coming from his back. What he never saw coming is Logan suddenly looming above him, getting ready to kick him. Logan drops down and nails Rain with a flying kick, sending up a cloud of dust that makes the club leader worried. Deep in the fog, Logan is sinking into the mud as a man wonders what happened until he hears Rain's voice, calling it a simple 1-star, spell meant just for plowing fields. When Logan turned around, he spotted the kid balancing on a pile of rocks and explaining how the spell could build a temporary dam to hold back floodwaters. Our hero grinned and asked if that didn't seem pretty useful. While some folks in the crowd looked scared or surprised, others were truly thrilled by the magic. The teacher thought to himself that standing high up on a platform gave him the perfect view and distance to stop Logan, especially since Ray had already predicted the attack, turned the ground into mud, and pinned Logan's feet. Everyone thought the fight was done since Rain was clearly winning. Then, from the top of the platform, our hero tossed the broom he'd been using as a weapon, and everyone just froze in disbelief. That move even startled Logan, making him look up with total confusion. Christy shouted at the kid, demanding to know what he was thinking and telling him to just cast a long-range spell to end it all. Right then, Logan, still trapped in the muck, began to dig deep for the strength to get moving. Just as the broom hit the ground, the guy shot up like a rocket, crushed it, and rushed at Rain to punch him. Just as he was about to strike Rain, Logan was suddenly halted by the massive tree roots our hero had just called into being. Everyone's jaws dropped when they realized that spell could make dead plants grow again. Just then, Logan understood why the kid had thrown the broom to snap the branch holding him, and Rains, keeping his word that he'd only cast 3 spells, asked if they should just end it now. As Logan saw he was about to lose, he started shouting insults at his opponent, refusing to let himself be humiliated. He started twisting and struggling as hard as he could get out. Seeing that, our hero started to worry he'd used too much magic. But then he explained that the vine stickiness was normal for a plant, and even though it was easy to handle, it still needed some fixes, while Ray noted that Logan looked like he was in pain, yet Logan told him not to worry since he'd feel better soon. Gripping the branch, our hero feigned a jab right at Logan's eye. Just as things were about to happen, he suddenly turned away and threw the branch aside, leaving Logan furious because he had promised to finish what he started. Before he could keep whining, Ray shouted that the fight was already done. Now that Logan lost, he'd better keep his mouth shut. Rain told Logan that he now knew how much it hurt to get hit, so he had to stop doing bad things. Then our hero moved the platform, and Logan, who was still stuck, finally felt someone show him real kindness. As the magic began to fade, Rain noted that the spell had worked well for a long time and seemed very useful. Feeling bored, our hero remembered he still had to officially end the fight, knowing that one side had to give up or fall apart completely. Just as Logan plummeted to the ground, Rain unleashed a powerful gust of wind that slammed into him. With his fingers still smoking, the kid claimed the fight was already over and that move didn't count as an attack. Rain glanced at the judge, holding his breath for the verdict, and when the man on the radio finally spoke, he shouted that Rain from the Wick family was the winner. The moment the winner was named, the crowd erupted into cheers, and Krista, who had been so worried, instantly looked happy and relieved. Rain looked back and saw someone leaning against the wall, walking toward him. The club leader thanked Rain for everything, admitting he didn't know how to repay such a big kindness. Our hero asked what the kid meant by kindness, but Rain interrupted him to say that even if they weren't perfect, he could feel the leader's determination in every spell he'd cast. And he spoke up firmly to say that the senior's hard work had not been wasted. Rain realized he talked too much, so he quickly apologized and asked if he could make a request. Grinning, our hero asked the man to keep crafting spells for the local growth so that Rain wouldn't be needed, trusting that the kid could handle it. While the club boss sobbed happy tears, Rain walked away from the arena, still wondering what Esther would have said if she had been there. He decided to stop worrying about it. After all, he wasn't Esther. Still, Rain wondered if he had managed to keep at least a shred of his dignity. That night in the dorm, Logan woke to the buzz of the crowd, who couldn't believe it when a useless noble somehow beat a genius like him. As soon as he wakes up, that guy is hit with a terrible headache. The professor standing by his bed asks Logan how he feels after dragging the school's name through the mud. With a cold sweat breaking out, the kid stammers out an excuse and starts calling his professor Big Brother. The professor ground his teeth and demanded, "Call me Professor." The weird sight scares the kid, so he instantly says sorry. The professor sighed and told Logan it was time for a break. The kid looks terrified and says that if he did it, his brother would probably get beaten up by the elders. Turning away, the professor tells Logan to stop pretending he's a genius and asks if he really thinks he's special just because people treat him like royalty. He kept his head down and spoke with a trembling voice to say no. Then the professor asked the boy about Scholzy Lewick, who explained that Rivendell students said Rain had worked as Scholzy's assistant for 3 years, leaving the boy stunned, and the professor added that since Heartless Scaly kept him around for that long, Rain's skills were truly real. Furious that the oldest son in the family was acting that way, Logan ignored everything his brother said and swore he'd knock the kid out next time they fight. Hearing that, the professor asks if he's stupid, since the kid looks just as stubborn even after getting beaten up. He challenges Logan on why he'd call a beaten and spared boy a disgrace, admitting that if that's all Logan can see, then his brother will let him do whatever he wants. As he walks out the door, the professor gives him one last reminder to stick to the bet. Now by himself, Logan tells himself he wasn't scared of his brother and that he didn't argue just to be respectful. 15 minutes before the big fight with Logan, Rain stood inside Delton's massive central library, the biggest one in the whole empire. He couldn't believe that Lynn's personal stories and diary entries had just been handed right to him. He asked the secretary where he could find more books just like the ones he already owns. Suddenly, she hands him 2 books. There are 2 tales, one about the mighty archer Kais and his life, and another about the fire dragon priestess Freedy. As he looks at the books, he is reminded of the wager he made with the priestess. She gave a smug grin and said they should bet on whose life story would end up being the thickest book. Lynn stared at her like she was crazy, wondering why anyone should care about a list made by a stranger. The mage tries to make him feel scared by claiming the legendary priestess has been freed, but he plays along like a kid and accepts the bet, thinking the result was obvious. So Esther, who is sharpening her sword with a stone stuck on the tip, turns around and says she's betting on Lynn instead. Fry wonders why she always wagers on the boy, and Esther replies that it is simply the obvious choice. Lin approaches Esther and presses for the truth behind her visit. But Esther just smiles and says there are many reasons until Lin calls her out on dodging the question, forcing her to admit that her short life, dictated by her bloodline, is the real reason. Kais was the oldest in the group, so he'd likely be next, and Free wasn't much different. Since Lim was young, she figured he would live the longest, which meant his life story would end up being the thickest. Even though they didn't know what the future held, she hoped that one day they would finally get to read Lin's biography. Holding the book, the boy feels a strange twist of fate since he was the very first one to die. Inside his mind, he quietly gives his thanks to the priestess for her victory. Our hero lays out his friends' stories next to each other and sees that Kaisa's had the thickest tale of all. When Ray reads the archer's book, he is shocked to discover that the archer has already built a school and trained many students. The man found a wife and started a family of his own. The boy smiles to himself, thinking his friends have led a happy life. Fry starts to notice something strange while looking through the Fire Dragon priestess's biography. No records exist after 1168. While she once led the Republic as a priestess, nobody knows where she went afterward. She didn't return until the year 1200, long after the Witch Association declared her dead. And that didn't sit right, because someone who loved being the center of attention would never quietly fade away. Still, he wonders if it might happen, believing that people can change. He slams the book shut, knowing there is no other way. He knew Fry better than anyone, so that terrible ending could never happen to her, which meant something had to have gone wrong. All of a sudden, an idea strikes him, making him wonder if she vanished because of someone else's doing. A shaman who saved the world quietly, then vanished without anyone noticing. Feeling overwhelmed, he crumples the pages and decides it might be better to look for books from the Republic instead. Then a girl tells him to read a book if he wants to know about Esther's group. So she hands him a biography, and he thanks her happily, thinking it is about her. But as he takes it, he realizes it is actually about Ash Shellman Terina, his own disciple. The book sends him drifting into deep thought until the girl who gave it to him asks what's wrong, and he tells her it's nothing while thanking her for the recommendation. As Rain turns the pages of the book, he can't help but wonder just how that playful girl turned into a powerful shaman. Some witches can command the spirits and hold the highest rank, but that power isn't for everyone to claim. So, he began to wonder if she had been the one who finally succeeded in breaking free. After reading for a while, he couldn't stop wondering how anyone could ever live that long. Rain can't decide if the story is true, so remembering what he learned about Freed, he realizes he might need to find a book from the Republic. Right then, he hears the signal that the duel is about to begin. He's still on the fence about going, but since he made all that noise, he knows he has to show up. Standing up, he asks the girl if she can hold onto that book for a moment, but she explains that if anyone asks for it, she'll have to give it right back. Rain promises he'll be back in just 15 minutes. After the magic duel with Logan, Rain bolts back to the library, eyes wide with worry as she frantically searches for something she's lost. She looks at Rain and asks if he took the book earlier, but he says no. Rain wonders if the book vanished, and Karen nods, explaining that by the time she finished her work and returned, it had already disappeared. Rain wonders if someone else took it, but the librarian shakes their head and says no. If someone takes an unregistered book, the alarm will start blaring. Rain can't believe that all of that happened in just a short while. Seeing Karen's worried face, he believes she's telling the truth, and after she apologizes for breaking her promise to keep the book safe, Rain tells her it's okay since they can just buy a new one and she should order it as if he lost it. She says no at first, but after Rain pushes really hard, she eventually says yes. She says she's shocked that a guy like him even exists and thanks him for it. Rain stares up at the ceiling in his room, wondering why so many people have been thanking him lately. Even though he knows it's probably a waste of time, he doesn't feel bad about it, wondering if it's because his body has changed or because he's been living such a peaceful life. No matter what happens, he realizes he has to figure out what to do about all these strange things, like that diary he gave to Esther suddenly ending up back in his hands. Just as he started digging into his friend's past, Tina's story vanished from the record. He wonders if it could be her, but then realizes it's impossible because she's gone, and everyone he knew from back when he was still Lin is dead too. He is losing his mind, trying to guess who was pulling all the strings. When he picked up the book again, he was strangely surprised to find he had already moved forward. Ray can't understand why he's in trouble when he only used his magic to beat someone up that whole day. Suddenly, he understands that he can speed up his own progress by using magic against others. That means the only way to find the truth is to break the door down with force. But his excitement quickly fades as he starts to realize something isn't right. Our main character figured that even though power could rule the world, it wasn't something that could be won just by using brute force. Even so, every time he cast a spell on something that couldn't move, the magic grew stronger by 1/10%. But when he turned it against Logan, The number jumped by 0.8%. After giving it some thought, he decides it's definitely worth a try. Using magic on living students at the school would be a huge problem. So he begins to wonder if he should become an adventurer, and Rain reminds him that either choice will require money for books, which his new path would help provide. The next day, Chad found himself completely swarmed by girls, all vying for his attention. Grumpy as ever, Rain tells them he doesn't want to get close and asks them to leave, but they just think he's joking and start laughing. Two guys chat, saying Rain is doing great with the girls and that starting the day with some flirtatious fun is truly classy. Hearing that, he is fed up with everything. Then Krista appears, captures everyone's eyes, and demands they make space for her, so they all scramble away and she finally gets to sit down. As Rain listens to Gertrude whispering a mischievous idea about his real nickname being Lady Killer, she gives him a playful grin and then walks away. Rain wants to speak with Krista, but she looks annoyed and tells him to leave her alone. Rain asks him why, then repeats herself, questioning if he didn't understand that she told him to leave her alone. Feeling defeated, he decides to stop bothering her and wonders in his mind if the magic duel is the reason. She closed her book and admitted she wasn't truly angry because watching it all unfold was actually pretty satisfying. What truly drives her crazy is that he secretly kept his strength hidden and pretended to be weak even after crushing Logan and her, when a powerful person should just strut around proud. And because of what he did, she can finally step on him without anyone calling her a bully for hurting the weak. She points at Rain and tells him to get ready, threatening that next time she'll crush him until he's nothing but dust. Everyone in the room notices Chris and starts whispering that the top student and Rain are having a showdown. They lock eyes, and our hero teases her that if she keeps standing like that, the teacher will dock her points. She nods, takes a seat, and thanks him for the warning, while everyone in the room quietly admires how polite Krista is. Gertrude figured that if Krista was going to spend all night rehearsing her war declaration, she should at least get it right. That weekend, the librarian Karen warned Rain that he had been causing trouble at the central library. Now he was left puzzled, wondering just what had just happened. Then she tells him that every book about Tarina is sold out. When he asks why, she admits she isn't entirely sure, but the Children of Gold's sex interrogation team has placed them on a censorship list. So he asks if the shaman was declared a heretic, and Karen confirms it, but Rain is confused because it's strange to label someone a heretic after they're already dead. So he asks if she read the book, and she says yes since it's required reading for any serious librarian. Rain is stunned, wondering if they're talking about the same person, and asks if the book mentioned any strange dark magic. She insists nothing seemed strange, noting that the text reads like a personal life story and that any real scandal would surely have been caught and removed by censors. Rain just wonders, if that's true, then what else am I missing? He sighs and says he's forced to turn to the black market, leaving her completely baffled by his plan. He says that since the black market sells everything from forbidden books to tools worn down by the abyss, you should have no trouble finding a book about Tina. Karen worries that censored items are so rare and expensive that buying one will cost a fortune. Rain worries that if this is the problem, letting his family pay for a heretical book would be too dangerous. The librarian explained that a book like that usually costs 3 gold coins, far more than she can ever afford on her meager salary. Rain quickly realizes that his first step is to scrape together some cash. He wonders whether to sell magic tricks on the corner or teach spells as a teacher, but he quickly realizes that neither job pays enough for all the time and effort it takes. In moments like that, Rain decides the only way out is a daring, high-stakes gamble worth the risk. And right then, his biggest risk was risking his own life to make $1. Rain spins toward the exit and thanks her, admitting she was a huge help. Her curiosity piqued. She asks him where he's headed. Rain admits he wants to take a shot at becoming an adventurer to earn some cash while he's stuck here. Worried about him, Karen argues it would be a shame for a lord from famous family to give up and insists he just needs a bit more time to sort things out, while Rain says this is the quickest way to get the money. Feeling ashamed that she can't stop him, she admits her sadness. The next morning, a strange man asks for Rain Wick, who is on the list, claiming he borrowed Tarina's biography. Since freshmen can't borrow books, he questions who gave the okay, only for the other librarian to admit Karen was the one. So he wonders where she is, and she tells him it's her day off. The man wonders if Karen missed the borrowing rules because she's new, which the librarian thinks is likely, while another worker guesses Karen might have written down the wrong name by mixing up Rain's and Ellen's. She says Karen's handwriting is such a mess that you can't tell if it says Ellen or Rain. Everyone's been buzzing about Rain, so Karen probably got mixed up and wrote it wrong. Plus, Karen's been sneaking off to meet the boy lately, and it seems love makes people make mistakes. Upon hearing this, the man agrees it's all good and promises to swap the borrower's name for Elin once the meeting is over. Back in the day, whenever folks thought about going on adventure, They instantly imagine tough, dangerous jobs for cash, rowdy drunks in taverns, and that whole gritty life. But now, they feel more like paid hunters who just go out and kill monsters. If you stand at the very top, you get treated like a real-life hero. Rain realizes that the world has truly changed. As he steps into the Adventurers Guild, he overhears a group of heroes grousing about the rat and spider trouble and how big the reward is. He keeps moving forward, always remembering what he needs to do. Behind the counter, the receptionist asks what he needs, and Rain says he wants to sign up as an adventurer. Judging by his uniform, she realizes he is a late student and asks if he has an ID or any documents. When he hands it over, he asks how long registration will take. She told us that for delayed students, it takes less than 10 minutes. She leans in to read his ID, sees his last name, and recalls that he belongs to a powerful, noble family. She wonders why a guy like him is even trying to become an adventurer. So Reina asks if there's anything else he needs to do and hands him a form to fill out and sign at the bottom. He asks why, and she replies that it's a special rule for nobles saying the guild isn't to blame for anything adventurers do, which makes Rain finish her thought by asking if that means some people try to shift the blame onto the guild. The receptionist explains that the rule was written because this strange event took place around 100 years ago. She hands him an iron tag and tells Rain that he is all checked out. She tells him that his adventure badge shows his current rank is iron. The next ranks climb all the way from bronze up to diamond. Any fighting skills you had before joining the adventure will now decide your adventurer rank and show if you're ready for the missions. Right as she's about to tell him he missed the ranking exam, the boy claims he already knows the basics and walks away. She tries to stop him by saying the information is still useful, but he thanks her and decides that's enough for today. The receptionist told him to look after himself and that his rank would mean bigger missions were waiting for him. Now that Rain is officially an adventurer, he's ready to hunt monsters for his rewards and step into dangerous places. For now, with just 44 silver coins in his pocket, he sets off to hunt down some rat spiders. Since they only cost 2 silver coins to kill, he assumes they must be pretty weak. So his only hope is to catch a whole lot of them. After leaving the guild, he walks toward a mountain where a Japanese-style gate stands, and Rain notes that the place has changed a lot. In the heart of the city, a huge crowd has gathered around a man who is said to sell potions that make you live forever. As he walks, the boy realizes the dragons must be dead, which is why the monsters are running wild. As Rain walks away, a man shouts after him to take a potion because monsters are waiting ahead, but the boy says no. He walked a little farther, found the stairs, and saw the path to the fire dragon shrine was still waiting there. As he looks up the stairs, he is reminded of the time he climbed them with his friends. He whispers to himself that the shaman's home is safe. Stretching out, he tells the shaman to watch closely while he drives all the pests from the land. Suddenly, a woman with long greenish hair appears, draws Rain's attention, questions if he's a mage, and reveals she knows he's not hiding, filling the air with tension as Rain insists he's just standing there. He wonders if his uniform makes his magic obvious, so she quickly says to stop and asks him to join their group since they need a mage. Rain is shocked to learn about the party, then introduces the members while pointing to a giant man behind her and says that Bart is a super reliable silver rank vanguard. Rain can't believe she's joking because the guy in front of her just doesn't look human at all, but the woman scolds her for being rude and insists that despite his scary looks, Bart is actually just a soft guy. Then she brings in the party's calm apprentice priest, Sammy, before the girl, the genius archer Rem, strikes a ridiculous pose and promises they'll give it their all, earning a sharp reaction from Rain, who jokes they look more like a criminal gang than heroes. Rem asks who he's calling a criminal, and he replies that they look like a human trafficking group trying to kidnap people. At that moment, an angry Bart tells Rain that if she wants a fight, he'll be ready to scare her with one. But then something strange happens, and the giant warrior who looked like he couldn't be stopped starts to cry. Rem tries to calm him down, reminding him that they've been misunderstood before. With a puzzled frown, Rain wonders why anyone would want someone like him, an iron-ranked nobody. Rem, puzzled by the question, insists that rank means nothing to him since he judges people just by how they look. She beamed brightly and told him he looked pretty strong. That attitude brings to mind Rain's old friend, Esther. She also mentions that Bart wouldn't let Rain walk down the monster-filled mountain path all by herself. Sammy warns that young students often end up in accidents while trying to make cash there. The group says they won't push him and advises him to be careful if he decides to go alone. After thinking it over, Rain thanks them for their advice but walks away, saying he'd rather do his own thing. The party leader lets out a long sigh, admitting it's a shame but saying there's nothing they can do. She insists he'll be okay and tells Bart not to worry. Just as Rain turned to leave, Rem said they should start hunting the rat spiders now that she'd found their home. Suddenly, someone taps her on the shoulder to stop her. It's Rain sweating while introducing himself. He says he's ready to join the party, So Rain leads the group out to hunt down the rat spiders. Over there, we see the spiders eating. Deep in the forest, a giant rat spider gnaws on tree branches. Then, he hears Rain's group questioning if rat spiders are real since they haven't spotted any around there. Bart asked the kid if splitting the profits evenly would be okay, and the kid agreed it sounded fair. They asked if this was Rain's first adventure and if he knew what those rat things were like. The kids shook their heads and asked if they could explain. That's when the cleric told them rat spiders had rat heads and spider bodies, lived in colonies of a queen, soldiers, and tree-eating workers, and that the soldiers attacked people, so Rain immediately asked about the queen. The young priest explained they wouldn't bother with her since they were only after the soldiers, leaving the queen who rarely visits the surface alone. But when Rain asked why they didn't just wipe out every monster at once, the priest simply called it the basic plan. Bart explained that the queen wasn't nearly as dangerous as the soldiers, so instead of spending a fortune to capture her, they decided to focus on the soldiers who were causing daily problems first. Rain flashed a sly grin and said that if catching her was that tough, the reward must be huge. As he pushed through the tall grass, Rem warned him not to even consider it, because the queen was a terrifying foe that even high-level adventurers feared. Right then, the girl's eyes lit up when she spotted something that looked exactly like what they'd been searching for. She leaped down the slope and shouted that she had finally found the rat spider's hunting ground. Even as she was falling, Rem shot a few arrows that took down 2 of the monsters below. The warrior didn't waste a second chasing her down, quickly taking out 2 more rat spiders before they could strike back. The ponytail guy motioned for them to follow him after spotting a giant swarm of rat spiders, and Rem guessed the pests must have caught their scent. While they fought, the girl urged Bart to end the battle before anyone else arrived, and the warrior agreed. Rain looked at the cleric and asked if it was truly okay for him to stay out of the fight between Rem and Bart, even though they were all sharing the money equally. As the priest rummaged through his bag and announced they only needed to start a campfire and get drinks ready, Rain couldn't believe it was really that simple. So the priest explained they never intended to let him fight, and Sammy added that they truly just wanted to help. Sammy promised they would answer Ray's call the moment they heard him, but they needed the money for his priesthood exam. Even though they already had plenty, they kept working hard because being around them, you could feel just how much they cared. Rain asked if it felt like unconditional love, and the smiling priest agreed that it sounded like something God would be happy to hear. The young priest admitted that even though he couldn't explain it, he felt a strange sense of unity that wasn't from God, and he just called it the simple need to be around other people. Sammy told us how much fun he had going on adventures with them, and the time they spent together filled his heart right up to the brim. He noticed he was talking too much, so he apologized for rambling and admitted that it felt pretty embarrassing for a priest. Ren agreed, and it felt great to have someone traveling with him. He recalled the old days of journeying with his friends, and it brought Tarina to mind. Ray asked Zoe if he knew anything about Tarina, and the young man replied, "Do you mean the Witch of Ashes?" As the others fought on, the priest said he couldn't know, and re-asked if the shaman had been taken by the church for heresy. He said it felt like it had really happened, yet at the same time, like it was just a dream. Just then, the purple-haired hunter of rat spiders walked right into a huge monster. Deep in the woods, every soul heard his cries of agony. The adventurers stood there, scratching their heads, trying to guess just what on earth that thing was. Bart sprinted toward the commotion, convinced what he was seeing had to be crazy. Rem couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the giant monster holding the adventurer in its mouth and asked if it was actually happening. Shivering with fear, they screamed that it was the queen. And that's when everyone understood that cruel fate had brought the queen, who rarely left her room, up onto the surface. Rain asked the quiet Snee why the queen was up there, and Snee calmly replied that the spider looked twice as big as a normal queen. Sarah explains that the monster had grown so big simply because it had been left alone for so long. All of a sudden, the queen lifts her head and starts screaming, causing this piercing pain in anyone who hears it. Everyone bolts, and Bart screams to not turn around to the monster, but they don't listen. The soldiers hear the queen scream. Seeing that, Sammy orders Rem and Bart to fall back. Rain wonders why it can't just be a big monster, but the priest tells her that it's far more complicated than that. When the queen arrives, the rat spiders gather in packs of 6, making them too strong for a rookie to fight alone. Suddenly, the rat spiders swarm and attack the adventurers, including Rem, who fights back and even strikes one of the rats that was about to hurt her friend. Bart tells Rem that fighting the soldiers is a waste of time and they should focus on the queen, but Rem replies that she already knows. The leader looks at the other two, tells the priest to watch over the rookies, and asks Rain to guard the cleric. With 4 arrows flying at once, the green-haired girl shoots them at the queen with perfect skill. Seeing this, the hero realizes it's K.I.'s trick, a shot that hits 2 targets at once with perfect aim. As the rat spiders charge at the archer, Bart steps in front and slashes them down with his axe to keep her safe. The warrior sprinted at the queen, leaped into the air, and drove his axe deep into her. The adventurers who spotted cheer, shouting that they've finally caught the queen. But then something thick and black like spilled ink starts bubbling up out of the blood, so the hero yells at him to run away before it kills him. Bart jumps back just as the liquid sprays out. People can't stop staring because it looks like it's actually alive. The defeated queen yanks the axe from her head and tosses it aside. Just then, Bart noticed the axe had melted down. Then the queen tears out her own eyes and grows fresh ones right where they were. Suddenly, she turns around to face Bart, who is standing frozen in his tracks. As Rem fights off soldiers and realizes the situation is terrible, she screams for Bart to run, but he freezes in terror, allowing the creature to tear his arm apart. With her friend in pain, Rem turns away from the attacking soldiers and vows to take down the queen no matter the cost. As Rem shoots an arrow into the spider's head, she asks if it will stop ignoring her. She begins kicking trash bags and sending the soldiers flying. The priest yells for Rain to stay behind and let him fight while the others charge. Rain is frozen in fear, recalling the poison he took while staring at the spider. He's convinced that this dark magic means a dark mage is hiding right nearby. Sammy grabs Rain's shoulder and asks why he's just standing there. Rain says he can't cast attack spells, and with no one else around to fight, we're stuck. Shaking with fear, the priest begs Rain to save his friends' lives. Rain breaks out in a cold sweat as he looks around to see his teammates getting taken down one by the monsters. Tears streaming down his face, he demands to know how much they'll earn for killing the queen. As the monster gnaws on him, the cleric remarks that the damage done should be worth about 20 gold coins. That's worth as much as 1,000 rat spiders. Upon hearing that, the protagonist shrugged it off and said that's not so bad. Then Rain falls on the queen holding a stick that bursts into a monster when it hits. A hush falls over everyone as Rain steps forward to face the creature, laughing that he'll tear it apart with his own bare hands. With a lightning spell, he blasts a blinding beam of light that forces the queen to drop Rem and Bart. So he tells the priest to rush and save them. Rain shouts at two extras that the only way to survive is to guard Sammy. Rain stares straight at the beast and promises to bring it down himself. The monster is missing a leg, yet it keeps on walking like nothing is wrong. With a spell on his lips, the brave boy rushes forward to fight the monster. He wipes out several soldiers as he moves forward. Sammy is worried, but right now all he can do is care for the hurt ones. Rain stands before the queen and blasts a fireball straight into the creature's neck. The monster lunges to strike back, but the hero slips right under it and begins drawing a glowing 3-star magic circle. Just as he's ready to cast the spell, one of the creature's legs slams down, stopping him and barely missing him. Knowing his weak magic might fail, and he had no backup plan, he forced himself to stay calm. So, he decides he must first get a good look at his enemy before activating Belsidius. As he gazes upon the creature, he understands that it is the black magic of 3 stars. A soldier lunges to strike him, but Rain slips away effortlessly, then pulls out a magic rope, realizing that the heavy black poison pouring from it is too strong for his body to take, so he'll have to switch from his usual trick to a 4-star spell. And because a black mage might be hiding nearby, the danger was enormous. The situation was a complete mess, and he had absolutely no clue what to do next. Even though she is badly hurt, Rem gets right back up, and the worried cleric begs her to lie down while she bleeds, but she insists she is fine and cuts him off to tell him to take care of Bart for her. One soldier lunges at her, but she fights back hard and slams him to the ground. Potato Head worries about Rem, but she tells him not to worry about her and to get rid of the spider rats instead. With Rain there, he knows nothing will work, so they have to run away right now. Just then, something hit the tree right next to the boy. Rain leans in close and sees that the soldier has no eyes. As soon as he realizes what that means, he freezes in horror because the queen is starting to kill her own young. The queen sees Rain trapped high up in a tree, so she tosses one of her creatures at him and knocks him down. But even as he plummets, the poor guy gets no respite because the spider charges him, forcing him to defend himself by raising a wall of earth. Facing the creature, he knows this is the end. Suddenly, an arrow whizzes through the air and strikes the queen right in her eye. With his body turned to ice, the hero can do nothing but stare helplessly. The queen pulls the arrow from her, while Rem warns her that ignoring his warnings was exactly what he told her not to do. The spider, furious, charges right at the girl. Sammy screams at Rem to run, but she thinks she can just hold on for a little while longer. The monster keeps rushing forward, never stopping. Rain grumbles that things are going badly and fires another lightning spell, while Rem yells at him to take care of his own business and rushes in to attack the creature. She slams the queen to the floor and yells, Are you going to finish this? Rain's eyes were about to overflow with tears, but he forced himself to stay cool. He hides behind a rock, thinking he can handle things without anyone noticing. Then Rain begins to concentrate, shaping a ring out of many triangles. After landing a kick on the queen, Rin stumbles from exhaustion, but she keeps dodging blows, forcing herself to hold on a little longer. Suddenly, the world around her turns gray, and she drops unconscious in an instant. The queen tosses her aside. The cleric reaches out to help her, only to be blocked by the very guardian meant to watch over him. Meanwhile, Rain stays hidden behind the rock, focusing hard on his spell. Sammy grabs a chance when the soldiers get distracted, breaks free, and dashes to Rem. The hero spits out blood because the spell took all his strength to finish. Just as the queen is about to finish Rem, a priest rushes in with the girl in his arms and dodges the attack. Everyone is stunned, even the creature, whose eyes go wide. Rem asks what Sammy thinks he's up to. He grabs her by the shirt and shouts that they must get out of there alive so they can keep smiling. She has to put an end to taking wild risks. She apologizes, holds on to the cleric's shoulder, and says that when they return, he'll have to write a reflection letter. He agrees, and with both of them standing before the queen, she warns him to be ready. The queen is stepping forward to strike, and the two stand ready to meet her blow. But then, something totally unexpected happens. The Rain's magic is finally all set. He unleashes a huge fireball that takes the creature down, and that deadly spell was built from 4 layers of triangles. The inscription began with angle and rule runes, then shifted to bind, and ended with disperse. Then, we had to crunch the numbers on 14 polynomials and 7 rational functions before finally finishing the coordinate and power equation calculations. Then he lights up the final circle, sending a towering flame that scorches the queen down to nothing. Everyone crouches down to hide from the fiery blast. And when they look up, they see the queen suddenly turn into black charcoal. Rain leaned against a rock and admitted he had been pretty pathetic. In his past life, he could cast that spell 7 times in a row without a single hitch. The queen's ashes danced away on the wind, drifting through the air. The spider rats that were furious just a moment ago now looked like scared rabbits. The adventurers spot them and shout that they won't let them escape. Once it's all done, the priest rushes over to Bart, who is lying on the ground. Staring at the ruins of the queen, Rem remembers the monster that once knocked him out with just 1 strike. As the cleric walks up to Bart to heal him, Rem suddenly says she feels dizzy. She wonders how the warrior is doing, and Sammy replies that his stomach is tough enough that he'll bounce back with little trouble. Bart looks at Rem, apologizes, and asks if she is okay. She says she got the care she needed, so she'll be okay and he shouldn't worry, since they just got unlucky in that fight. She says it's strange that the queen has that kind of healing power, since the guild records don't mention it all. Even then, the boys manage to knock her down with a single hit. As darkness creeps in, the group scrambles to get to Rain. The mage says the kid is sick from too much magic. Rem guesses he used it all up on that last hit, but Sammy is confused why the rain hit still bothers him. So she thinks the queen must have been nearby and he needed protection, while she insists they wait until later to talk and focus on saving him now. Meanwhile, the unconscious Rain dreams of his past self as Lin, where he asks his friends not to officially join his hero team and to tell the king about it. But an old man doesn't understand why a boy would ask that since the king was preparing to honor heroes who save humanity. Esther asks if he's messing around or thinks they're troublemakers, telling him to stop calling him that. Confused, the protagonist insists it's not like that and claims he's just different from everyone else. FRE's face tightens with worry, and she urgently asks him what he means. Suddenly, Lin jumps in to say that he doesn't carry a destiny like Kais or Fried. Unlike Esther, who has a mission, he has no purpose to chase. And he wasn't traveling for anyone else, just following his own curious spirit. So, showing up was pure luck. Lin claims he doesn't want his name written down, since he knows he'd only bring shame to their good reputation. Hearing this, Kais pats Lin on the head as the crowd bursts into laughter at how silly he looks for worrying about that. Feeling annoyed, the boy retorts that his reaction isn't worry, but simply a logical conclusion, only for Esther to gently take his hand and assure him with a calm smile that he truly belongs to their group, no matter what others might say. So he doesn't have to worry about making a sacrifice. He can just do what he feels is right, since everyone already sees him as the hero's chief wizard. When Rain opens his eyes, he finds himself right in the heart of the city. As Bart carries him, Rem looks surprised to see he's finally awake and asks where they are. She says they are heading off to the school together. Rain groans as his muscles scream from overexertion, yet he's relieved they escaped the Black Mage's notice. Bart wonders if Rain was the one who called down that fire, and Rain pauses to think, realizing Rem knows they can't lie because they already know it was him. Rain admits he wasn't hiding anything, and when she confirms it really was him, they discuss how to fix the mistake they made by reporting he kept a secret, but he insists they just leave it as it is. Since he seems to have his reasons, Rem decides not to ask any more questions and promises that they will repay the life he saved. Our hero just said no. As soon as the cleric agrees to keep all the rewards, he instantly shouts yes. Rem stares at the kid like he's crazy and asks why she's giving him that look, since he really earned his prize. And while she finally agrees, she admits she had been hoping he'd share the reward with everyone who worked hard instead of taking it all for himself. Rain admits she's been dreaming a lot, which makes everyone laugh. The guy admits he was just joking and says 5 gold coins are plenty, but Bart insists he should keep all of them since it's only fair. Rain tries to speak up, but Rem shuts her down, telling her to use their connections to turn this mess into a chance. And she asks what he thinks, so he agrees, saying it's a great idea. The priest then asked if he'd mentioned Tina before, and our hero said yes, wondering why he needed to bring her up now. Sammy says he might have misheard something from the church district, but the way it sounded, the shaman turned to dark magic in her later years. Rain waves goodbye to Rem's group with a bright smile. Once the others go, his face grows serious, and he realizes the girl really has gotten tangled up in dark magic. At the library, Rain leans his chin on his hand while flipping through a book. He shuts the book, convinced that Tarina had no part in the dark magic. He stares at the book in his hands and suddenly remembers a time when he was still Lin. Lin flings her ward book aside. Holding his staff tightly, the boy steps forward toward the ruined road village at the bottom of the abyss. Deep inside a swamp, they found Tarina waiting in an old house that was half underwater. Back in those days, she was just a 7-year-old kid. Lin flicks his fingers and instantly turns scraps of wood and ripped book pages into a crackling campfire. He said she would be just the one to do it. Then the girl begins to cough, and Lin turns and slowly walks over to her. Tarina looks terrified as Lin pulls something out of his bag. The moment she sees it's food, her fear vanishes. He holds out the bread, reassuring her that it's safe to eat with no trickery at all. The rest of the group moves closer as Lin asks if she plans to eat since that's all he has, but she stays quiet while Lin sighs. Then the girl finally gave in and cried out that her mom, her dad, and everyone she knew were gone. Hearing that, Lin asked if her village ever touched the outside world. She says she has no real idea. Lin stood up, admitting he'd never known such a village existed, but realizing now that she might be the only one left who remembers its people. He says that sounds really lonely, a life where no one remembers you. And then he asks if she's okay with that, because if she dies, that place will vanish without a trace. Tina is about to cry, so she grabs his shirt and says she doesn't want that. Lin steps forward and insists that she must eat the bread, even if she doesn't want to, because she needs to stay alive to remember the people living there. That's the only thing she can do. Then the girl begins to eat as if her life depended on it, because it truly did. As she eats, tears stream down her face, and from that day on, Tarina follows him everywhere. The kid's got a talent for magic, but Rain says he never set out to make her a great mage. All he taught her were the spells she'd need to survive. Even after they split up, she kept learning hard without ever complaining. They trained hard to douse small flames with water magic and catch falling people using earth magic. Every spell cast was intended to bring help to others. Freedy asks Lin if she enjoys teaching young kids, while Esther questions if that's true, and Freedy insists they speak with sense. As he watches the girl practice her magic, he wonders if what he feels is just sympathy or something deeper. Maybe he feels close to her because her life mirrors his own past. The day finally arrives for Tina to say goodbye at the church. Despite her sad face, she quietly says goodbye without causing a fuss. Esther insists they must leave the town right away before things get worse, and Lin agrees while the boy quietly hopes Tarina is safe. As the man showed her around the house, promising the space would feel less overwhelming once she got used to it, the miserable girl just stayed quiet. Seeing her worry, the man tried to calm her down by telling her not to fret, since they were now family and would take care of her. Then the quiet Tarina spoke up and said that wasn't her home. She drew a magic circle of squares and declared that her only true family was her master. An old man in black robes descended the stairs to tell the priest that the child was admitted, but then screamed in terror when he saw the priest pinned to a pillar by vines and ordered a search party sent to find out if the child had done it. With a smile, the priest told them she was okay and there was no need to chase, so the old man reluctantly stopped arguing and let her go. The priest sighed as he remembered how the girl had trapped him. He demanded to know what she was doing and ordered her to let him go, but Tarina apologized and explained that she had to stay by her master's side. The priest told the old man how wonderful it was to be young, and the old man simply smiled back, saying the priest was very tolerant. Lin was walking with his group when he suddenly heard someone calling his name. As he glanced back, he froze in shock to see Terina, drained and desperate, sprinting toward them while screaming his name. The protagonist asked how she got there, and she said she ran away using the magic he taught her. She dropped to her knees and begged him to bring her along, promising she'd cause no trouble. Lin stared at Esther, silently reading her mind. He finally agreed, but warned they couldn't stick together until the very end. He questioned if Terina would have used magic to hurt anyone if she escaped, and since she said no, Lin gave her permission to join the heroes while reminding her that magic must never be used to harm others. As they journeyed side by side, her talent began to flourish. Even though she took big risks, she was totally real. As she trained alongside the others, they saw her hidden talent and began teaching her in new and exciting ways. Tiana soaked up new spells and skills as quickly as a sponge soaks up water. Though she looked a bit scared at first, she learned her skills fast. Once she proved strong enough to face the biggest monsters, they finally welcomed her into their group. One night by the campfire, Esther stepped up with gifts for the girl. The brand new dress made her feel so happy. Frady gently touched Terina's shoulder and pointed to Lin, who was holding a straw hat. The girl thought the gift was meant for her, but Lin snatched it away and said it was actually for him. As their journey through the abyss drew to a close, she grew strong enough to truly help out. Inside the ruined cabin, Lin insisted she stay put, but she refused to back down, claiming he knew exactly what she could do and that she was ready to fight. Just then Esther arrived to say she agreed with Lin that they had to leave Terina behind. The girl shouted at her friends to speak up, but they both stayed quiet. She felt sad because they had been together for so long, and she couldn't believe they were planning to leave her behind. Lin admitted she was still a beginner and the monster ahead was far too deadly. But since they had started this path as a group of 4, she insisted that the journey must end with all 4 of them standing together. Lin reached up to tousle her hair and whispered that there was no need to worry. He promised that when she returned, he'd show her even more magic. She bit her lip to hold back her tears and promised they could wait. Lin beamed with a smile, and then they set off together. And that's how their wild rides with her came to a stop. To Rain, it made no sense at all, since that girl was heading straight into the world of dark magic. It was too suspicious that books about Terina had vanished from the shelves and made it onto the banned list. Rain opened the book and Rudian tapped his forehead, noting his research progress had jumped from 37.9% to 40%, yet he felt strange that erasing the rat spiders only nudged the numbers up by 2%, so he knew there was still a long road ahead. At the very end of the book, you'll find a drawing of Lin. Right below, the girl had called him the greatest master in the entire world. Rain's smile grows as he's about to say something about her. But then, without any warning, that smile vanishes. The sun rose over the rat-spider battleground, where the robed people grumbled that the lingering heat might draw the golden children and scare off adventurers, while one person guessed the blast must have been at least a 4-star spell. If the interrogated people spoke the truth, it means the adventurers Rem and Bart were there, causing the impatient rogue to vow revenge, while the calmer one warns that such anger would only draw the golden children's attention. Then the other one whispers they just have to be careful not to get caught. The calm one reminds the hot-headed one that there are bigger things to handle before seeking revenge, and when asked what they are, simply says they must tell Terina first. As he reaches the club room, 2 students rush up to him, asking if he's okay, but he tells them he's fine and not to worry. The club leader stands at the front, tells everyone to take their seats as the meeting begins, and mentions that there are way more members than before. Joan introduces himself as the president of the local magic club, admits he didn't expect so many people, says he's thrilled, and hopes everyone gets along. He's just about to explain the club's purpose when someone walks in, and though he keeps talking about using magic for the town, he stops dead in his tracks the moment he realizes who it is. Everyone is stunned because it's Logan. After a quiet moment, the man introduces himself as Logan and expresses his hope that they will get along. Joan feels a little nervous as she admits he appeared just when it mattered most. He waves Logan over to sit down, but the guy freezes when he sees the only open spot is right next to Rain. The main character, still acting self-satisfied, points to the empty chair next to him while wearing a mean little grin. Once everyone is seated, Joan tells them to clear their minds and take good care of everything. Rain points out that Logan seems to always keep his word, and Logan just replies that he's simply following the rules. As Joan talks, the hero drifts away wondering if he could ever defeat the dark mages if he had to. Summoning his Rudian, he checks his low magic and stamina, realizing he must toughen his body quickly. But he can't just throw on random exercises. It's much better to have a coach to lead him. Then Rain starts thinking about Logan, who seems just perfect for the job. Later on the training field, Rain endures Logan's harsh workout. During the session, Logan recalls the moment the kid asked him to train him. Logan can't understand why Rain would ask that question since Rain is the one who beat him, but the protagonist tells Logan not to hold a grudge because he's just the next big tough guy in a group that really annoys him, and he's so mad his forehead veins are popping out. He claims he lost the fight, so he thinks ignoring him is the only fair thing to do. But he also says there's no reason for the kid to ruin his school. Rain rained on his head, leaving him confused and sighing that he simply isn't free enough to go around mocking people. After closing his book, the protagonist tells Logan that since he's been getting the wrong idea, he's going to be straight with him. Rain points at Logan and says that since he's strong, he needs Logan to help him get in shape. Plus, he's not mocking him. He's just genuinely surprised that someone so young could be so strong. Logan is grateful, yet he's puzzled by what Rain means when she talks about age. The protagonist admits that a strong body is essential, but knows he doesn't have one. So he decides to train properly instead of wasting time and asks Logan if it would be smarter to get help from someone who actually knows what they're doing. Logan sighs and agrees with the kid, saying there probably isn't anyone more qualified than him in.